Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, drinkers, tinkers, and dangerous thinkers, welcome along to the Joe Spiver YouTube channel, where we discuss books and little else, and where we very occasionally do indeed break bread with the long since dead. You join me on a typically foggy day here in the north of England. You join me in the purview of the Limehouse Golem. The mist and the fog has descended, and I could easily envision Emilia Ricoletti rounding the nearest bend and coming to avenge her death upon me as we speak. Thankfully, lots of the sun has burnt that away, but there's still some remnants remaining. Also, over the weekend, I did my interview with Steve Donoghue, which all went very well. I escaped with my life. Mum and Dad paid the ransom. All was well. My thumbscrew wounds are healing up just nicely with the Albus oil and things. And my mother has obtained is now curiously perspicacious on footballing matters. She has watched the Netflix documentary of David Beckham. And has now got stronger opinions on his free kick ability, on Sir Alex Ferguson, the Manchester United football manager of the noughties and tens, on Victoria Beckham, believes that she isn't worth the ground on which she walks. All these strong opinions. There's been a cosmological inversion. My mother is now a football fan, enjoys talking about the whys and wherefores of 90s footballing politics, so goodness knows I'll probably be ironing soon. So a weird weekend. But thank you so much for Steve for having my chat again as usual. But you join me for Victober, ladies and gentlemen. This is our 7th instalment. We have been positively prolific in our reviews of some of our long since dead authors. And today you join me for Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy. This is the 1891 book of unfettered grisliness. This is despair and destitution and, frankly, just horror from start to finish. It follows the story of our eponymous Tess, whose father, who is already an irresponsible wastrel, a drunkard, temerarious person who relies upon others very, very heavily and has never taken a forthright positive step forward in his life. He is told by a passing parson who recognises that he's drunk and is effectively being patronising and ridiculing, and tells him, "Father John, I was, looking at the books the other day, and you might be related to a rich family." And then John says, "Oh, excellent! Christ, what the D'Urbervilles. Oh, right." He then goes and gets tipsy and drunk and all of the rest of it, and learns of a family of D'Urbervilles who might well want to take them in, perhaps in some weird quixotic way. And so Tess, who is his daughter, is sent to claim kin, I believe is the phrase, whereby she goes up to the D'Urbervilles' house, knocks on the door, and expects to be adorned with all of the familial brilliance of a stately home, which of course she isn't. She there meets Alec D'Urberville, who is a creepy, conniving, little good-for-nothing sort, a little weaselly ferret that ought to be stamped on, who relies very heavily upon the definite power imbalance. I hate that word, I hate that phraseology, but nonetheless it stands true. The power imbalance between Tess and Alec is relied upon by Alec, and he sexually assaults her in the fall. She then has a child, then loses that child, and then goes on to Talbot Hayes, where she is then a milkmaid, and she meets a slightly more impressive and appealing Angel Clare, who is part of a new generation of those questioning the verity of the Holy Scripture, and is remarked as being a little bit more of a rationalist, a little bit more of a free liberal thinker, somebody who, as I say, thinks a little bit more for himself, is a little bit more lenient, and is rightly appealing to all of these women at Talbot Hayes. It must also be said that when Tess comes back and she is with child and refuses Alec D'Urberville's hand, her mother, who is the unsung hero of devilry in this book, she obviously all sorts of horror start in the homes, and because They are particularly because they're not particularly good parents. Tess is forced to go out a lot on her own, and her mother is sort of irresponsible, much like her father is. She's sort of full of those subtle velleities, which mean that she feels compelled to do something, but never really has the moral stomach to do it. And I believe she's the ultimate root of Tess's misfortune. But the mother sends Tess away and says, sod you, go, and out of sort of public shame, Tess then goes to Talbot Hayes and meets Angel Clare and ends up canoodling with him as well. So that's the basic plot outline of Tess the Devil. This is my very, very bizarre cheap Wordsworth Classics edition. That doesn't look like Tess Durbeyfield on there. That looks like a 20th century tennis, or 21st century tennis mum. If you look hard enough, you can just about see her son's racket and lunch pack behind there. She is unbelievably wistful, obviously, as you can see there. She's very considerate. But yeah, unfettered grisliness is how I would describe this. It never lets you off the canvas for 1 second. It is ridiculously difficult to read. Few things to say. I first studied this in 2019 for my A-levels, when I was but a boy, when I was an annoying, petulant little pen thrower that wanted the affections of the more female versions of the class, female members of the class, rather than to actually extend my study. And didn't enjoy it then for very different reasons, and I didn't enjoy it this time for very different reasons again. So if you'll allow me, viewers, to analogise, and I know you will, you love a Spivey analogy, shall we say that reading a new book is analogous to popping yourself into a new home, okay? Slight monetary differences, but beyond that I think it stands. You have lots of things that you've accrued over time that you want to pop into that new property or new facility or new place, and sometimes when you've bought the property and you're going into it, you have lots of your old little things and you're popping them into places. You've got all of your furniture that you're popping into place, into the corner. You've got your velour sofas, the lot. You've got your microwave and your air fryer that you're popping into the corner. You've got your pictures that you're putting up. You're observing the transport links. You're perhaps listing out for potential noisy neighbours. And all of a sudden, very reluctantly, you realise that you aren't going to enjoy living there. And that is what it is like for me stepping into this again. 50, 60, 70 pages in, I realised it's a horrible feeling. This is a horrid, horrid feeling whenever you get it, reading something of canonical relevance. I soon realised that I was not going to enjoy reading this. Hardy is, in my opinion, inefficient. So this is 350 pages long, and veritably nothing happens. Very, very little happens. And when something of significance does happen to occur, such as the sexual assault of, the terrible sexual assault of Tess by Alec, manipulative bugger, it's not really described. Obviously, you can't literally describe it, but even the sort of paradigm-shifting symbolism that Hardy could use isn't really brought into being. It's full of lots of finicky bits. So he describes in exhaustive detail the milking processes of cows. He looks at the landscape. I believe he's an architect, so he's very involved in lots of the Gothic remnants of architecture in Wessex. I think this might not be Hardy's Wessex, but it's in the country. And yeah, he concentrates far too much on the minutiae, and then the big themes he sometimes drops the ball on. I found it just whatever it was. It's sometimes one of those sort of indescribable differences that you find with an author where you just don't click. The modish term would be that we just don't get on. We just don't click. And so, yeah, I haven't terribly enjoyed this. As I say, there were some, at the start anyway, at the opening 50 pages, there were some embarrassingly basic remarks made by my 17 or 18-year-old self 3 or 4 years ago that I enjoyed rereading, done in pen, all about power imbalances and things that my teacher was essentially telling us to put down and to annotate. But that was very interesting. Yeah, typical Victorian trope, or something typical of the Victorian period, a fallen woman, meaning that the social value of a woman's sexual inexperience is used as a little bit of a vehicle to express double standards of the time. That's what it says all over the blurb. That's essentially what it does. You can't help feeling that Tess's treatment is entirely iniquitous, and had she been born somewhere else, she would have been much better off in the world. The writing's nice in places. Sometimes I think it's a bit garrulous. Sometimes I think it's needlessly complex. There's a difference between being profound and being needlessly complex. You can clearly see how, again, the ghost of Darwinianism haunts this book. You have often the randomity and the sort of aleatoric nature of the natural world is evoked. Had I not been born in this... Loads of times, whilst engaging in suicidal ideation, Tess will say, had I not been born in this time, all would have been much better. You have... There's a very strong sense in this book that the writer wants to impress, and boy does he want to impress these things on you, these themes. Boy does he want you to know that he knows that possibly all of this isn't planned out by some higher nebulous prime mover, and this is all, we're all just essentially apes with slightly more complex brains and slightly more gregarious natures. That's basically it. And boy does Hardy want you to know that. Sometimes his pen sticks through the paper. If we're going to analogize, if a book is a massage, sometimes Hardy just puts his thumbs in a little too hard and forces you to jolt in your chair. Let's just say that. But there are a few sections I want to highlight that I think... I've been quite kind. I've picked 3 that I like and 2 that I really dislike, but I could have picked way more. But let's have a little dive into it. So the first section I've highlighted... They're only very short quotations. Do not worry, readers. Or viewers, rather. So this is when Angel's having not much of an epiphany, but Hardy is trying to not exonerate him, but make Angel Clare appealing, in contrast to the devilry of Alec earlier on. So many besides Angel have learned that the magnitude of lives is not as to their external displacements, but as to their subjective experiences. The impressionable peasant leads a larger, fuller, more dramatic life than the pachydermatous king. Looking at it thus, he found that life was to be seen of the same magnitude here as elsewhere. So, essentially talking about how, a pauper can lead just as meaningful a life as a king or a viceroy of India, whatever you might think. But again, Hardy's a huge fan of these sort of epigrams, that he's trying to be like Eliot, but he hasn't got the grasp or the skill to be like George Eliot. He can't, he's far too garrulous and complex on occasions where a few words would do, and a more terse phrase would, a more terse and stern phrase would do. I think he's trying to do too much, and he wants to so obviously imbue upon the reader that he knows about this socio-political issue, he knows about this fallen woman, he knows about a rise in secularism, he knows about the weird doctrinal dogmatisms of the traditional church. He knows about all this, and he wants his readers to know that he knows. So we've got another section here, which... Again, I've literally written in the headline, "Stop trying to be Eliot." I've written in pencil there. So I was clearly angered at this. So this is talking about... I've written, "You haven't got the rhythm or precision to be like it." So, and the passage runs thusly. "Yet such is the vulpine slyness of Dame Nature that till now Tess had been hoodwinked by her love for Claire into forgetting it might result in vitalisations that would inflict upon others what she had bewailed as misfortune to herself." Answers on a postcard, folks. I shall go again. No, I won't read it again. But I've no idea what that sentence means. I know what's going on in the book. I know what stage we're at in the novel. She's having some misgivings, but she's overall positive about Angel Clare. I've no idea what that sentence means. She's supposed to be deliberating, and I'm currently in the fog. Another section where we're kind to him, but where we yeah, as I say, he's clearly capable. He can clearly pull it together. So he thus beheld in the pale morning light the resolve to separate from her, not as a hot and indignant instinct, but denuded of the passionateness which had made it scorch and burn, standing in its bones, nothing but a skeleton, but nonetheless there. So that's Angel, who suddenly discovers that Tess has been impregnated beforehand, and thus, as we say, her chastity and her virginity and her sexual innocence has been compromised, and that is somehow a cornerstone of what men deemed women to be vital of in that period. We have some really nice sections later on, though. This essentially is, if this was a Penguin Classic and you had a quotation on the back, this would be it. Inside this exterior over which the eye might have roved as over a thing scarcely percipient, almost inorganic, there was the record of a pulsing life which had learnt too well for its years of the dust and ashes of things, of the cruelty of lust and the fragility of love, which is, I'm sure you'll agree, is a lovely section. It's worth noting also that Tess is fetishised, shall we say, by Alec a little bit, and Hardy, again, make sure that you know this, by her being a little bit... she looks a little older than she actually is. So she's about, I think, 16 or 17 when it starts, but she looks, and she's about 1 and 20 by the time this finishes, but she looks much older. She's made to look much older, and therefore more sexualised and more, whatever, amenable. So yes, that was Thomas Hardy's Tess of the D'Urbervilles. As I say, this was a very cheap school edition, drilled into me for A-level when I was 17 or 18. Didn't enjoy it then, haven't enjoyed it now. I'm sure that Far From the Madding Crowd and Jude the Obscure are much better, but I can't tell just how much people are congratulating this book for its social purpose and its moral message and all the other stuff that should be concomitants of good texts, but shouldn't carry the piece overall in general. So yes, Tess of the D'Urbervilles, Thomas Hardy, not a huge fan, but we'll put that aside. And we have one book or collections remaining for Victober, and this is going to be a genuine joy, ladies and gents. I will not have to force myself to do any of this, whereas halfway through Tess of the D'Urbervilles, it was like any proverb you can think for hardship. It was like that. But we have, for this week, hold on folks, we have the complete stories of Sherlock Holmes, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Quite a very pensive, pipe-wielding Holmes there. I'm going to do Study in Scarlet, most of the adventures, and as much as I can get my hands on, because this is the lot. It's got the Valley of Fear in. It's got all of the Return, all of the casebook, His Last Bow, the lot. With, I believe, official, original, the complete stories with original illustrations from the Strand magazine. This was bought for me by my grandmother when I was 7 or 8, when we would go to the local Waterstones and she would pay an outstanding, extortionate sum to please me. So this will have been about £25 back then. This would easily retail for 40 quid now. The complete stories of Holmes in such an opulent casing, as I'm sure you'll agree. So yes, that will be our Victober for probably the end of the week. I've been tagged by Steve to do a watching booktube tag that will hopefully be here tomorrow, so stay tuned, like and subscribe, hit the notification bell. Don't do any of that. But yes, thank you all so much for your wonderful comments. Thank you for, if you have subscribed and you've shown at least some trust in me. I promise I'm not going to bugger off after, as I say, I get my first big skincare brand deal or anything like that. I'm going nowhere. I am your loyal servant here to stay. But yes, thank you ever so much for watching, guys, and I will see you probably tomorrow, actually, with a tag.